Recently, it seems that we're supposed to get excited for phones that we can't really buy. Why is that, and what really do companies have to gain from it? To talk more specifically, in most recent events, I'd like to address the Vivo Apex. This is a concept phone built by, of course, Vivo, where supposedly half the display has an integrated Touch ID sensor, where in actuality it's more like a quarter of the display just kind of awkwardly placed in like the second quarter of it. I don't know why. But I've noticed this as being a running problem because I was thinking back at some of the older concept phones I'd seen before, one of which being an Oppo optical zoom concept. I made a video about this back in February of 2017. It's been over a year, and as far as I know, we haven't really seen that implemented into actual smartphones. Way back when, the idea was that we could build sensors and lenses sideways into phones via mirrors and be able to actually stretch lenses apart. That way you don't have to have giant telephoto lenses tacked onto your iPhone, making for these awkward accessories. You could actually have a real optical zoom, not a digital zoom. And since then, we've kind of seen that, like, yeah, your R&D department came up with that, and where did they go with it? I guess they just wanted attention. A lot of people forgot about this, but both Vivo and Qualcomm last summer made prototypes of displays that had fingerprint readers in them, both of which were saying that, well, this is technology that may come eventually. It's not ready yet, but we're saying it's possible, and that was before the iPhone X came out. I may feel like a broken record here, but I'll repeat it. Apple was rumored via patents, and what we were reading last year that they figured out a way to put Touch ID underneath the display, but because for one, it cost too much, it took too long to manufacture, they didn't go through with it. But now when companies like Vivo especially like to release these concept phones where they have truly bezel-less designs, now they don't have a notch, there's not even an earpiece at the top. Instead, for a front-facing camera, we literally have the camera pop out of the phone itself, which I'm sure case manufacturers are going to love. And I'm sure that double power button to activate the opening camera command on Android is going to love. So if you reach into your pocket, meaning to change the volume and you turn on the camera, now you're gonna have a giant pop out. I'm sure it's very durable and it won't break at all. And I'm sure it helps with waterproofing a lot. In case you can't catch my drift on the sarcasm, I don't think that the future of front-facing cameras is having rotors built into the phone that pop out the camera itself. It doesn't seem logistical to me, it doesn't seem logical, but I guess what Vivo's going for, or other concept phones, is getting everyone's immediate attention, but my question is, why do you want everyone's attention if you don't really have anything to sell? I kinda had similar complaints back with CES because so much of CES has turned it into a concept electronics show, showing off things that are not really ready, and most oftentimes we don't really see in the future either. For years now, we've had Samsung teasing that this flexible smartphone is about to come out, and they come out on stage and have these demos of phones that are flat, but then they unfold into tablets. But yet when it comes to the consumer market, all we get is like the ZTE Atom, where you have just basically two phones tied together. What I like about Apple is that they really work hard on making sure that they don't really unveil anything unless they're sure it's going to come out. Now, we can argue all day on whether they release them too soon. There's plenty of complaints about how, AirPods were delayed, the HomePod was delayed. It's 2018, early 2018, and we still haven't gotten the AirPower charge mat. I'm hoping to see that unveil any day, but, it's not years in advance. Apple didn't unveil the HomePod and not say what the price of it was, or that it wouldn't be available until like the 2020s. What I've noticed especially about consumer electronics shows and when companies are trying to build hype for products that they actually can't mass produce yet, is that usually the real thing is not quite as exciting. Kind of like the Vivo X20 Plus has a built-in fingerprint reader. You can actually buy that phone, but sacrifice on camera, sacrifice on processor, sacrifice on charging port, and still charge $700, which results in a phone with one great feature, but no one's really gonna wanna switch to that as their daily driver because every other part of the phone is pretty awful. So I don't really get the mindset of like, let's get people's attention with the Vivo Apex, this truly bezel-less phone that has a large display with a huge part of it dedicated to the fingerprint reader, if they really just want to direct people towards the X20, which is just a heavily compromised version of that. Or back at CES, we got Project Linda from Razer, where you can just let your Razer phone sit as the trackpad on your laptop. But my question was, now you have a trackpad that doesn't click, your hands are covering up the speakers, and the the laptop itself runs Android, but it's not a touchscreen. So many issues I have with that design, but the reason I realized so many people were okay with releasing concepts was if you criticize them, everyone can just say, well, it's a concept. Therefore, you're not allowed to criticize it because it's not officially out, and the real thing, of course, will be way better, because that's how companies unveiling things early work, right? In my experience, when companies are trying to generate hype, they usually like to throw all of their money into the concept, and then when the real thing comes out, it's not as great as everyone was saying. I hate to bring this up as an example because I really like this company, but Essential, when they first announced their company, was demoing this dual camera where one is monochrome and one is color, and combined they're able to produce these beautiful images, and you can get crisp video quality. But then of course we get the Essential phone, find out that the camera's not too great. Of course they've gotten software updates since then, but the primary feature of the Essential phone was supposed to be delivering a stock Android experience, and then we find out it's laggy and delayed. So when I hear about companies releasing these bezel-less designs, and I should mention on the Vivo Apex, at least with those concept phones, they're entirely gesture-based. Hilariously, you swipe up to go home. I wonder where they got that idea. They throw all of their money into these prototypes that they let a couple people in the press check out, when in actuality, if that Vivo Apex were to hit the market, it would probably be well over $2,000. But if you bring that up, people can just say, well, it's a concept. The technology's not ready yet. So what happens is you get companies like Vivo, and you get Android fans excited because they say, well, look, this is what the Android community is coming up with. This is what's in store for us. But as soon as there's an issue with it, as many people tested the Vivo Apex and noticed that the fingerprint reader doesn't work all the time, switching to the front-facing camera takes a little longer now because you have to physically move the camera up. This causes water resistance issues. Anytime you bring that up, they can just go back to that excuse of, well, it's a concept, so you can't really hate on it. In my opinion, what I want you guys to take from this is, if it is a concept, as in it's not in mass production yet, we have every reason, in fact, we should be intentionally critical of it so that the company understands our complaints with it and realizes that no, just for the fact that you can have thinner bezels does not mean you need to compromise on speaker quality and start having the glass actually shake to act as an earpiece, or that you need to make a mechanical front-facing camera. That's not really what we're interested in, and I don't think most markets would be okay with it. When we see things like Project Linda, I think it's fair game to criticize that as much as possible and say, no, that's not really what people want. Or when we're seeing concepts of Samsung Galaxy phones that can unfold into tablets, that when you have to compromise on battery, CPU, and camera in order to just have a phone that you can bend, it's not worth it. People aren't into that. Let's not just excuse all of these R&D prototypes as, well, it's a concept. Of course, when the real thing comes out, it'll be way, way, way better, right? No, we don't have a history of that being proof. If anything, the concepts are usually way better than the final result. So let's be extra hard on these concepts. Let's be extra hard on those so that the companies can get our actual feedback and know if they want to put something like this into mass production, they need to consider what consumers are going to notice. I hope that made sense to you. I hope that you can keep that in mind. I, for one, am glad that Apple doesn't show up at every electronics show and say, look at this new technology that could someday be in an iPhone. I'm actually glad that in 2017 they had two major keynotes. They were stocked to the brim with announcements and new products. And yes, while they took a long time to come out, we still knew how much they were going to cost, and they were available before 12 months had gone by. I would be very, very shocked if the air-powered charge mat was not ready before the next WWDC. That would be kind of surprising, but even if it was, that would still not be quite a year. Whereas Oppo, Vivo, Qualcomm, lots of concepts that never really make it onto mainstream devices. So please let me know your thoughts on this, on concept phones, and whether or not this should be encouraged. We need more companies to start releasing phones you can't buy just to generate hype. Is this good? Is this bad? Let me know in the comments below. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I will see you in the next one.